Good evening, participants. CSI Chennai, ACM Chennai, IEEE CS Madras chapters cordially invite you to a webinar on experimental AI for social good by Dr. Parag Kulkarni, Professor, AI and ML, Tokyo International University, Japan, CEO and Chief Scientist, Innovation Research Labs, Pune. They can dramatically improve the efficiencies of our workplaces and can augment the work humans can do and frees up the human workforce to do their core work that they are better equipped for. That is the tasks that involve creativity and empathy, among others. The rapid advances in AI and ML have made it possible to leverage AI and ML techniques to address some of the most challenging problems faced by the society. AI and machine learning have slowly broken the shackles of different technology limitations and started the journey in our everyday life. While we have been discussing about unstructured data mining and text processing, we undermine the possibilities where AI can work as a catalyst to change our lives. AI has been playing a key role in various applications. This talk will try to take you through technology landscapes and application horizons of AI with reference to social good. Dr. Parag is an entrepreneur, machine learning researcher, and an acclaimed author. He holds a PhD from IIT Kharagpur 2001, management education from IIM Calcutta, and was conferred the highest doctorate DSc by UGSM Business School, Monarch, Switzerland 2010. He founded and built innovative companies such as Bina Limited and Innovation Research Labs. He was a core contributor in product building at companies like Ideas, Capsilon, SAC Siemens, in the capacity of research head and chief scientist. Dr. Parag's ML ideas resulted in pioneering products and have become commercially successful and produced unprecedented impact. He has delivered over 1,000 keynote addresses and 200 plus tutorials across the globe. Over 100 institutes and 100,000 professionals benefited from his talks, research, and systemic consultations in Singapore, US, Europe, Japan, and India. He has played a key role in making over 2 dozen startups successful in the past 2 decades. Dr. Parag has guided 16 PhD candidates and published over 300 plus research papers. He has over 25 years of experience in technologies, product building, and applications of AI and ML to different verticals. He is a pioneer in the concept of systemic machine learning, reverse hypothesis machine learning, context vector machines, and deep explorative machine learning. Dr. Parag has over dozen patents to his credit. He has authored 14 books with the publishers like Bloomsbury, IEEE, Wiley, Prentice Hall, Oxford University Press, Springer, etc., including best-selling books on innovation strategy, ML and data science, systemic machine learning, artificial intelligence, a reference book in over 2 dozen universities across the globe. Dr. Parag is a fellow of the IET, IETE, and a senior member of IEEE. He is a recipient of Oriental Foundation Scholarship. In 2019, he was awarded IETE KR Bagde Award for Innovative Entrepreneurship and Research. Over to Dr. Parag. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very good evening. And today, actually, we will talk about AI applications. We will talk about experimental AI for social good. And I found few questions also sent to me, and very interesting questions. And I'm really thankful for all those who have put those questions. So we'll go through those questions. We'll try to answer that. And we will be open for discussion. If anyone has any question, you can reach to me anytime. I will share my email address. So dear friends, first of all, why I have given title Experimental AI for Social Good. Basically, I love reinforcement machine learning. Because I always think that is the way human learns. We are always learning from trial and error. We reinforce it and we try to go for betterment. So before actually going into this topic and diving deep into artificial intelligence, let me tell you about this book, Artificial Intelligence. I'm very thankful for Prentice Hall India for taking up this project. in 1915 or so, or before that, Malaya met me from PHI, and he said that there are two books, very popular books on artificial intelligence. One is Russell Norvig. It's a wonderful book, but very big. And another book is Rich Knight, which is very complex. So can we bridge the gap? And that's how this book started. And thanks to my co-author, Dr. Prachi Joshi, and many PhD students who actually allowed me to experiment few AI concepts. And we tried to simplify AI. We tried to put few simple case studies of artificial intelligence. Probably it was the effort, or it was an attempt of democratization of artificial intelligence, and that's how this book is evolved. And again, it's all efforts by marketing team and everyone that it is referred in many universities and doing wonderfully. And we even are thinking of coming up with a new edition with more case studies and further taking few concepts, which actually I will try to include even in this talk. These are a few other books I have written. Knowledge Innovation Strategy is one of the best-selling book. It says forward by Dr. F.C. Kohli, who passed away last month only, and is a wonderful person and my guru. Then it has a endorsement by Ratan Tata. Then this reverse hypothesis machine learning is a completely new concept, and Springer published it. Reinforcement and systemic machine learning. We have tried to introduce the concept of systemic machine learning in this book. And there are a few other books. So dear friends, AI is not new. Means when I was studying, there used to be conferences why AI couldn't do very well. Even in 1995, I attended one conference where the topic was why AI could not deliver and so on and so forth. So I was studying at IIT Kharagpur for a PhD. My guide was a wonderful professor. He formed one small research group, and we were working on this dynamic load balancing using artificial intelligence and so on, and some interesting experimentation was on. And I will tell you a story of one of my friend who was a BTech candidate, Shama, who was in part of our group. IIT Kharagpur, maybe most of you know that it's one of the biggest campuses in India. It's 2,200 acres. It's almost more than 6 times IIT Bombay campus, or 5 times. So, and there's a main building, and adjacent to main building there is a BC Roy Hall, and all PhD candidates used to stay in BC Roy Hall. Even today, it's the same story. And since it's a huge campus, there used to be grass everywhere. And one fine day, myself, this group member Shama, and then there was another member Rohil, we were discussing about load balancing, and I was behind Rohil that okay, to complete those results, that baseline things and all that, so I can publish paper in IEEE and I can complete my PhD. I told Shama ki you will complete your BTech and go away. Even Rohil will complete his MTech, but I will remain here because I had few friends who were doing PhD for 7 years. So I was just behind Shama discussing that particular research paper, which we were, there were high stakes, my high stakes in that paper. And Shama was looking in the other direction. There was a sword-like device, and these grass cutters cutting grass using that sword-like device. And Shama was looking in that direction, and he was not ready to listen to me. Then I asked Shama, what are you doing? You're not listening to me. He said, see, this guy is not doing right. I said, why? Let him cut his grass. Let's go ahead with our paper. So he said, no. That is not the right method. Anyway, Shama was a great developer, and he was a very important asset to our group. So I have no courage to tell him or go against him. So I said, okay, Shama, chalo, what are you saying? So we went to that person, cutter person, and then Shama told him, come with us. That person said, I get 65 rupees per day. I can't come with you. Then Shama pulled 100 rupees note, gave to that person. We took him to BC Roy Hospital. Even the hospital in IIT Kharagpur campus is named after BC Roy. And we took him to BC Roy Hospital. Then Shama took him to orthopedic surgeon. They got his right hand x-rayed from different direction. And doctor concluded that because of the chronic pressure on his right hand, there's a possibility of permanent damage to his right hand. Shama said, look, I was telling this. And then in next 1 month, Shama developed a portable grass cutter. And he used some initial AI concept because it's long back story, more than almost 25 years back. What Shama did, Shama developed a grass cutter on wheels. There was a hydraulic mechanism. There were blades underneath. He has a small feedback system where the pressure applied by the person will be measured, and based on that, there will be alarm. Someone can call it as feedback system or feedback control system. Typically, we used to have in electrical engineering. But I thought probably that was thinking in AI way. And Shama had many such solutions. Even if you see that there are these cycle rickshaw pullers in Kharagpur, he came up with a mechanism, a small learning mechanism which can actually find out some balancing mechanism so that there will be less effort for those people who were pulling those cycle rickshaws. So what I first think always, there were many questions that people said that, okay, what I should do to become a data scientist, which courses I should do to become or to work in AI. First, I always think that you start thinking in AI way. Can I make this thing intelligent? And this wonderful example of Shama, who I always found thinking in AI way. So what is artificial intelligence? Because I found many of you are attendees are students, because I gone through the list of the attendees. And then many of them are from different branches too. So it becomes mandatory or it becomes necessary to tell you about what some basics of artificial intelligence before we talk about more applications, more projects, and few projects those Innovation did, those some of my students did, and few products where I was consultant. So what is artificial intelligence? Embedding intelligence and abilities into machine so that machine can exhibit intelligence for which human being is known and admired. So that's what is the definition I have tried to make, which is again based on Turing test of intelligence. And Turing test of intelligence basically suggests that if you are getting response from two rooms, and one is from the room with a machine and one room is with a human being, and if you can't distinguish your response getting from this room or that room, then probably you have passed, that machine has passed the Turing test of intelligence. So basically we then started experimenting, and then there came a concept of creative artificial intelligence. And interestingly, this is a very, very upcoming area. And we want AI to exhibit creative skills. We want machines to be creative. We want machines to be painter. We want machines to be poet. For what? Please don't ask me. Maybe we will have a different, we can have a debate on that separately. A collection of processes, natural and or technological, which are capable of achieving or simulating behavior which is exhibited by humans would be deemed creative, is the creative artificial intelligence. If human being does something and you say it is creative, and if the machine can do the same thing, then machine is creative. That is the definition of creative AI system. And if you actually look at this definition, which is basically inspired from a lot of description by Margaret Boden, author of the book, The Creative Mind, a wonderful book. She's a Sussex professor, 80 years plus age, and I think 75 plus year of age. And she's done a lot of work in this creative things and how AI can be creative and so on. And then there can be creative tests of intelligence. So for any creative activity, you can have same Turing test like a creative test of intelligence. So basically, what I want to again underline that AI and ML is a thought process. And these are some, I have tried to list out few questions, few important questions and few repeated. I have heard it. There were more than 50 questions totally. But anyway, I will try to answer most of them through discussion. And if anything is remaining, please do ask me and we'll try to take a crack at it. And definitely we'll try to answer it. And in case I won't answer it within the next 1 hour, you can always write me mail and I will reply. Now, AI, if you look at AI, anyone who has studied AI knows that agent is a core thing. And we always have a topic that intelligent agent. Intelligent agent performs actions. It has percept, and there is a percept sequence. It processes that percept sequence. And then there comes reinforcement machine learning, where you are getting this response and you're trying to gauge your action in the new environment and you're trying to correct it. And this process continues, right? Like human being, we always try when you're in new country, you try to find out how to talk with people. Maybe suppose I'm in Japan, I'm trying to talk to people in my own Indian way, and I found that, okay, the response from Japanese is not that, they're not actually responding the favorable way. Probably I have to be more polite, and I try to be polite. If I'm calling with them with the name, then I realize that, okay, everyone is calling him san or sensei, so I should add that, I should improve it, I'm improving every day. So this is nothing but reinforcement learning. And reinforcement learning has even now become a core part of deep learning, which is called as deep reinforcement machine learning. Deep learning and reinforcement learning are combined. And there are a lot of very good algorithms came up. And there are even few questions that why the companies like DeepMind and all are not coming out of India. And so we'll try to look at those questions also. Now, why experimental AI? Why the word experimental? Because wow, and for social good. So someone may take the opinion that probably social good AI is still in experimental phase. To be honest, I don't want to say that. What I want to say, experimental has a flavor of research, and social things is about experiments, about numbers, about measurement, about uncertainty, about reinforcement, and about context. The social thing, if you look at any social activity, you can't just put it for social. You can't put just any AI application for healthcare. There's a lot of experiments involved, a lot of numbers involved, because it's there is a definition of social good. There is a definition of social good which involves a number. So that's why I thought though it's in a good stage, not exactly in the nascent stage, there is a lot of experiments. Those can be consumed for societal benefits or for social good. And even the experiment conducted by Sharma can be consumed by societal good. Unfortunately, whether to call it social good or not, it's a question, because it could not meet the criteria of numbers. It could not change the lives of millions, but probably it could have inspired something. And probably Sharma completed his BTech and went to Redmond Hill to join Microsoft. And that experiment remained there. Rohil completed his MTech and joined AT&T Bell Labs. And then the experiment remained there. I completed my PhD in 3 years, came back to Pune. And the experiment remained there, and it could not impact people. So whether it should be called social good, probably, I don't know. This we'll try to see. So talking about social good, answering social question. A social good is about actions and activities or technologies and products, those contribute largely to society and benefits the largest number of people in the largest possible way. So there is an underlying thing about social good is it is largest number of people and largest possible way. If it just benefit Ambani's, then it is not social good. But making data available, if that can benefit millions of people and making their life easier, probably Jio is doing that. So it remains, again, a gray area where I should define, but I think very clearly they are saying that the largest number of people in the largest possible way. It could include healthcare for everyone, clean and healthy air, clean and healthy water, literacy, empowerment, or any amenity or any product which is required and is reaching to the number of peoples, then it is definitely contributing to social good. Also, it is known as common good. Social good can trace its history to ancient Greece philosopher and implies a positive impact on individual or society in general. It also provides the basis for charity and philanthropic work. So there are actually, if you look at it, many universities started social computing and many people are doing research in social computing. And I'm really sometimes think that whether it will become another abused word like innovation, that everyone is saying that innovation and not happening. So probably everyone will say social good and not happening. So sometimes those definitions are very important. So social good is about empowerment, creating value. So if I'm talking about AI, creating value through AI, improving mental health for millions. So if someone develops depression detection software and which is really working and can improve health of millions, definitely it's a social good. Helping large population using AI empowered system, wellness for everyone, caring environment, and there are many questions about different social and how it can be used, what can be techniques. Someone even asked about convolution neural network and how it can be used. So when I'm talking about social good, there are questions. If I'm developing a product, who are getting impacted? One important question. So that's why actually big data can be very relevant for social good. How they are getting impacted? Betterment, touching lives of millions, value for the population. There is a direct value delivered and indirect value delivered. Then there can be a cycle of social good and can be classified the applications. And interestingly, I written this here, and I found a question also in that list. Can we develop AI application which can classify any activity, whether it's social good or not? Found it's a wonderful project, and someone who actually raised this question, actually hats off to him or her. Because if we can develop this product, there are many companies, actually there are many government initiatives are coming that, okay, this product, that product, and then again, it becomes too subjective that some reviewer thinks that it is social good, another reviewer thinks that it is not social good. Sometimes there are grants for social good projects, and then it becomes very cluttered at some point of time. So someone develops it, and it can be definitely, there can be pattern. I even found that it can be done with some simple feature extraction. One of my friend is he's working on a project that identifying similar books. And because if you look at it, Google actually gives the list, and even Amazon gives the list. But these are just title based. And there are a few papers by Amazon scientists. Those papers talk about this textual content similarity. So they're doing some sort of maybe advanced TF-ID, if you can say. And then they're doing some natural language processing and finding similarity of the book. Since I'm also writing a lot of things, and I've written a couple of fictions. Even one of my fiction was adopted as a TV serial on Sony Marathi, Year Down YD. And I'm a regular visitor of some of the book clubs here in Pune. I found that I did one experiment I gone with this list. Typically, Amazon recommends. When to me, or because I didn't find those books I will write or I want to buy. So I went to these people, these are really book lovers, and I said that, okay, you bought this book, so you definitely like this book. They said, no, I don't like this book. So it goes beyond that. And that's true for even all these applications, and there can be opportunities. So if you look at it, this is just a small diagram I tried to build. There is a social or good or common good. So there are green, this shows the properties of social good. These are goal-driven. Number is important. And it has to deal with uncertainty. It has to deal with networking. And it has to do with evolution. So if you look at it, if you have to develop really systemic, really a social good application, you have to look into all these things. First thing, you have to go deal with huge data. Secondly, you have to deal with bio-inspired, because social good is related to human. So bio-inspired machine learning plays a very key role. Human being, there is evolutionary computing, definitely that will play. There can be competitive and greedy strategies. Human being believes in cooperation, so a lot of social good projects, AI projects, should have cooperative machine learning or cooperative learning projects. Those will be systemic because it's a systemic problem. If you look at social good, you can't just replace something with other. There will be systemic impact. One of my friend's favorite example is that in New York and London City, 300 years back or 400 years back, the horse carriages and horses was the major means of commute. Someone will say it's a very natural way and wonderful way, right? Much better than greenhouse gas emitting vehicles. But unfortunately, it was not so. Because what used to happen, these horses created a problem of horse dung. And New York and London, some part of the London and New York City, used to be full of horse dung, because horse, you can't control that, and everywhere on the road there will be horse dung. If it's a rainy season, it used to become very dirty. There will be a lot of mosquitoes and insects. So they wanted to get rid of horse dung. What we did, we came up with cars. Cars have started producing another dung, that is greenhouse gases. Tomorrow we are coming with electric cars. We don't know what is the impact of that. So probably if someone, a systemic thinker, can visualize what is going to be impact on whole system and try to approach this problem. And there was another question on explainable AI. And definitely I had a point to make it that explainable AI I find very relevant for social good. Again, a very hats off to the person who raised the question. Because what happens that we always view AI as a black box. And when we view as a black box, many opportunities to generate ideas goes in fan. It demolishes trust and increases monopolies. Let's say even the Google and IBM has only those black boxes, they are going to rule the world. And if this explainable AI is available, every individual can come up with his own idea and maybe take a small part of it, and it should be, that's why we need an explainable AI. That doesn't mean that we should not have tools. We should have tools. But explainable AI can allow experts to germinate idea. It can create more expert. It can help us to solve problems. It can generate trust. It can demolish monopolies. It can minimize errors, and accidents in your context will be reduced. So what are the various possibilities? So answering questions to majority, there can be societal chatbots, summarizing at your service. There can be recommendation action, healthcare, chatbots for mental health, overall health, legal companion, educational mentor, social companion, good Samaritan. Actually, even that was again I have taken your question. So, dear friends, so here is what we want to say. Peter Senge defined learning does not mean acquiring more information, but expanding the ability to produce the result we truly want out of the life. Similarly, if you look at artificial intelligence, if you look at artificial intelligence from this perspective, it is about embedding intelligence, preferably human-like intelligence, into machine to expand its ability to produce the result truly we want from it. So how shall I go about it? So I have created the stages, and I will tell you every stage with one real example, and then we will take many case studies, and then we'll try to disintegrate, or we'll try to explain few architectures which are possible. Now, this is one of my favorite story again. Mani Bhaumik. He was from Midnapur. He did his master's from Kolkata and joined for his PhD at IIT Kharagpur. He was originally from Midnapur and he used to travel in the buses those days, and maybe sometimes those buses were very crowded. Sometimes you have to sit on the top of the bus, and not buses, maybe even there can be some other means, maybe bullock cars or whatever it may be, because it's a old story. And he had specs. And in those days, those specs were made up of glass, very heavy. Actually, his friend had specs. And a friend once came to him and said, you are such a scientist, can you solve this problem, my problem of specs? So, Mani during his PhD started thinking, can I solve this problem? Can this person get rid of specs? So there was slightly less AI involved, very limited, but he came up with LASIK. And today the people do surgery after 18 with the LASIK laser. To get rid of specs. And probably he has delivered the impact to millions of lives. So think, he has began with the problem. And I always say that we begin with a research paper, and that's the problem. We have to begin with the problem and then go to research papers. And that exactly that in my opinion could be the better. I have another very good example. Identify learning opportunities. So then you try to see, okay, this problem I'm solving, can it be intelligent? What are the learning opportunities in that machine? I will tell you example. There is one Mr. Shrikant Vaidya. He's from a small place, Kupwad near Sangli. Shrikant did his diploma in mechanical engineering. He's not an artificial intelligence researcher, basically. So there was a question, I need this for AI research? So he can answer your questions. So Shrikant was thinking, Shrikant joined here Thermax in Pune, worked for some time, and then thought going back to his native. And one fine day, it's near Sangli, he was roaming around. And he found there are a lot of small machines lying outside few farms. These machines were looking very cute, very interesting, very new. But they were just lying there, and it was rainy season. He was wondering why these so much good-looking machines are there. So he tried, but he didn't have answer. So he went to one farmer, asked him, can you tell me why this machine is lying here? So that farmer told that there is a government scheme that all agro waste should be converted into agro fuel. And there is some foreign made machine for which they give some subsidy, and you have to pay only 10%, 20% or whatever it may be, and then maybe you can pay some amount afterwards, or what. There was some scheme of government. And that's why people buy it. But then this machine works very well for 3-4 months, and after that there is a maintenance, and this cost increases slowly, and then it is useless. Now its maintenance cost is so high that I can't actually use it to produce agrofuel. So Shrikant thought for a moment. He said, "Can you give me this machine? I want to buy it." He said, "You can take it like this." But he paid some small amount, took that machine, and he dismantled that machine. And he found that couple of issues in the machine. One thing what he found that machine was using some 4-chain pulley mechanism or whatever it may be inside. And then it used to have 2 forceful strokes. One is a forward stroke and one is reverse stroke. And then this agro waste is pulled in two what you can say 2 barrels there, and when it is pushed, it is converted into agro waste, agro fuel, and then this in reverse, and again it comes back and again pushes it so that agro fuel is generated. But then he realized a lot of problems. One thing is, because of that mechanical impact, there was a lot of wear and tear. Second thing, what he realized, whatever the type of agro waste is there, even if it is waste from cow, it is cow dung, or it is some sort of crop waste, whatever may be the waste, the pressure applied is same. And because of that, sometimes that particular agro fuel, those blocks, burning blocks, or those blocks made for agro fuel, are so hard that difficult to burn. Or sometimes those are so porous that they produces lot of unhealthy gases. So what he did, interestingly, he used AI plus a lot of other things. First thing what he did, he used hydraulic mechanism to reduce the wear and tear. So there is more mechanical part. Second thing, he used another intelligent thing, that reverse stroke should be used. So he used 2 barrels. So he made a 2-stroke machine. That forward stroke, it will press in the front barrel. Reverse stroke, it will press in another barrel. And third thing what he made is very interesting, that he developed a small, again with some machine learning researcher and image processing expert, he developed a mechanism which will take the image of that material and the weight of that material, and that will be used to classify that material. And based on the classification of that agro waste, the pressure which is to be applied is decided. Imagine Shrikant's Hydrabel, which he has patented also, and he has more than twice efficiency. Cost reduced to 25% of the original. And it is used now in more than 25 countries and hundreds of farmers in India. That is social good. What is AI for social good? What we are talking about. So that's the opportunity, and that opportunity may exist, may possible in every machine. It may possible in every appliance we are using. Probably all agriculture appliances. All appliances. He even did it for this is called a briquetting machine, basically. He did it for baling machine also, which is used in sugarcane factory, sugar factories, to pack those sugar waste. So he came up with so what So these opportunities, so these learning opportunities, anyone who is looking for social good as an area of research has to look for these opportunities. We had opportunity to work on with few projects, few agro projects, few interesting projects in Japan. There is a Niigata is one of the northern area in Japan. Niigata is a prefecture, and in Niigata is known for rice and mushroom production. Niigata mushrooms are exported to many countries. So this company, one of the mushroom company from Niigata, they were packing and separating these mushrooms. They're trying to tell us that these mushrooms are very high quality. But generally what happens that few other quality mushrooms are mixed. Sometimes few mushrooms are poisonous also. And there are few mushrooms, those are not good for health. So they wanted, this project is still going on, and we are working on this project. So they want that to separate or classify the mushroom based on health benefits, not just poisonous. And it's a very complex, because this image processing is not working, and we're trying we have identified some 25 features of these mushrooms based on images and a couple of other aspects, and we are trying to classify it. We got some success and prototype and other things like that. Another very interesting, and that definitely if it becomes successful, we think that it can be social good, because a lot of farmers from that region will benefit. A lot of people can eat the healthy food, because they are getting now mixed mushrooms. Sometimes you may not getting all the healthy mushrooms. And maybe a lot of human errors can be avoided. This opportunity cost-based parking allocation, again, this whether it to classify as social good or not, that's a question. Maybe you can decide it, because our definition is pretty strict in the beginning. But in Japan, you know that there is in Tokyo, the parking is very expensive. It's 12,000 yen. It can go to 1,200 yen half an hour, or sometimes even very high. If you go to central region, it can become as expensive that sometimes you park a car for 6 months, and you will, if you wouldn't have parked, you would have bought another car. So, and there are a lot of many parking companies. So similar like Uber, we are working on this project, that this dynamic parking allocation, and anyone can find a cheaper parking close by. So that's many like you find a Uber taxi, or maybe something like similar that project is doing. But presently Tokyo and Japan is going through this COVID thing, and still this project is on hold. So we are working for one other company in Japan. Where is the company had reported that this human intervention based appraisal systems have issues. And generally, there used to be some sort of, not exactly nepotism, but subjectivity is there. So they wanted with limited or without human intervention, there should be appraisal system. Again, this may not be social good, but definitely an application on which we are working on. There was another question by one of the professors in that list, that in legal, what AI can do. And one of my students, Bandot, actually did develop one very interesting solution. Bandot is from Hungary. He's a lawyer. Actually, he was a criminal lawyer. He practiced law for some days. And at the age of 30, he decided that he wanted to go for masters, and he was attending master. And then what problem he was trying to solve, that the people try to find a lawyer for a particular problem. Like basically, he was a criminal lawyer for some criminal case. or for maybe some case which is maybe related to criminal case. Then they call the lawyer's office, they take the appointment, they try to explain to some fresh, maybe some intern in the lawyer office. That intern may not understand sometimes that complex thing. Then the expert, even that lawyer, steps in. They put some 2 hours, 3 hours, and at the end of the 3 hours, they realize that this case their firm can't take. They can't charge that person. And since any small firm cannot charge, maybe a very big firm can still write the board outside that 1 hour this much charges, like many lawyers do in the United States. But there it's not possible. So that much time of that person is also wasted, and that firm also wasted. And he said it happens many times. It's a very frequent thing. It's not a very once in a while thing. So he wanted to solve this problem. So what he did, he came up with a legal kiosk. He developed one kiosk. And in front of that kiosk, this interactive kiosk will ask few questions. And then even that person will answer few questions. And if he has to tell some additional thing, he will tell verbally. And using text processing, that case is ranked in the color zone red, green, yellow, so that what is the probability that firm can take it, right? And if the possibility is less than 50%, and still he goes and talks to the lawyer, then he will be charged for that discussion if the case is not taken by the lawyer. If it is more than 50% and he or she talks with the lawyer, then they will not charge, even they may not able to take that case. So generally, he said that the success rate is, this is a basically prototype he has developed, and success rate is some 60, 70, 80%. And as long as it's more than 50, he said that he's doing good. Only thing is he should not end up in repelling a lot of customers, or maybe reducing their customers, and actual customers are not turning up, but it's doing fairly well. So when someone asks that, and this basically, again, a text mining and text processing based, we are also working with one Delhi legal firm to classify these legal documents and finding exactly contextual similar legal case in the past. We have a patent, context-based machine learning, which is cited by Google researchers many times. And this patent tries to retrieve the context. And this is generic. We basically use it for healthcare, but it can be used for legal, and we are still in discussion with this firm. But the idea is to classify the legal cases and find out exactly similar case in the past. So there are two advantages. This can be used by lawyers or legal system, so that can expedite the process, because exactly similar case. So what many times there are so many cases and so huge legal documentation that even expert lawyers find it very difficult. And even we discuss with many lawyers for this. Secondly, it can even help individuals to identify what is the possibly will happen in their case. There is another very interesting project by a Thailand student. There are elephants in the Thailand, and they destroy this agricultural crops, and then there are a lot of damage is done, and this guy wants to actually stop this damage. So he came up with some mechanism where based on camera, they're trying to find out that particular elephant herd or group of elephants will reach to that particular place in how much time. And secondly, he's also trying to track some sensors, install some sensors. Those can also mean this is more like an AI IoT project. Few sensors also to locate their location of these farmers these elephants. There is another Dan. He is from Norway, and he was trying to behave the behavioral aspects in video games so that they can help human to behave in a better way. There was one question related to that also. There can be something which can guide you morally as well as socially how to behave, and he's trying to embed this behavioral aspect and so that these games will actually try to tell how to behave socially, how to act in particular scenario, and then and based on your expressions and emotions, the actor or the players in those video games will respond. So there are many more ideas and opportunities. I always think that probably this is still AI is in nascent stage. We are talking about singularity is near and all that, but I don't believe it's near. It's not constrained by applications. You can use it anywhere. And there is another example from Pune itself. There is Mr. Satish Gandhi. He has chickpeas factory, and he was exporting chickpeas. And a lot of his export orders were not realizing. There's a whole long story in my book, Knowledge Innovation Strategy, but I will not tell you the complete story. But then he was trying to find out what to do. He is the guy who actually developed the first automated chana making machine, which can keep the taste of hand-picked chana. But then he was wondering how he can make a quality control. So Satish Gandhi, with one of his friends, who's a machine learning researcher, and we also got some opportunity to work with them, but we were not the machine learning researcher for them. They came up with 35 odd parameters to classify chana into 4 categories. One category is completely breakable. So you just put it and it will break. It's an export quality. Typically, we export good quality. That's why I'm not saying export quality should be always good. But then there is a 2-cycle processing. So some chana remains unbroken, and even human being can't find out, because you look at that chana or you look at that chickpeas and you think that it is broken, but it's not broken. It remains like that. And then when actually customer finds it, so he came a 2-cycle breakable, 3-cycle breakable, and not breakable. And with that, he made an automated classification and automated chana making. And this guy actually could finally get some very precious orders, including orders from some airlines. I think most were Turkish Airlines. And today, this guy is exporting chana to more than 40 countries in the world. Imagine. So you can use AI for chana classification. You can use AI for parking. You can use it everywhere. I will tell you another very interesting example. In hospitality industry, I was a chief scientist at IDEAS. IDEA Integrated Decision Systems is a company in Pune. It's a development center in Pune and headquartered in Minneapolis. And this story in 2001, it was in year 2000, there was foot and mouth disease in Europe. The impact was not like this pandemic, but definitely it was uncertainty. And occupancy was going down. People were really finding it difficult. So the company was also trying to find it difficult to sell the product, because we had the revenue management system for hospitality industry. So then there are few things we did. It started a little bit, some sort of progress did happen. But then again, there was 9/11 episode. The occupancy went down like anything. And we wanted to solve this problem. We wanted that layoff should be stopped. Company should start selling the product to hotels. And that's where we came up with the incremental machine learning in 2003. 2001, towards December or January, where it was very interesting that they used to have patterns. The company used to have patterns of occupancy of different hotels. We had those clustered patterns. We had behavioral patterns, and those patterns are clustered. And then we, not based on last 6 months history, but we came up with a mechanism that you take 1 day data, quickly try to put it in one of the buckets, start giving them recommendation, and as more data is coming, recommendations will be improved. Interestingly, this allowed the company to sell the product not only to 5-star hotels, because before it was selling only to 5-star hotels because the product was expensive. This reduced the cost of the product, and we could sell it to even airport hotels and 3-star, 2-star hotels. And company could grab 1,000 customers in spite of difficult situation in 2001. There's another very interesting social project we are doing with agriculture company Agrisk. We have identified that there is an agro imbalance issue. On one day, you will find tomato is 200 rupees kilo. On another day, just after 2 months, you will find it is 10 rupees kg. You will find tur dal touching to 200. Some other day, you will find it 50 rupees. And that issue we are trying to solve. So what we're doing? So first experiment we did, that we tried to get all government data which is available, and we made some learning system, we used all those patterns, and we tried to give the decisions that the mandis can decide the rate, we can recommend the farmers what to sow and what to do. This is not working. So one of the Agrisk researcher, Shankara, he said that farmers can't tell exact thing. They want, when you survey this data or whenever this government is publishing data, the surveys they are publishing, these are more like a politically correct data. So there is a need of intent mining. So we developed one scenario-based intent mining for farmers, which tries to find out what the farmers intend to sow. And based on that intent mining, and based on historical information, not just based on historical information which was done in past, we are also using this historical information and farmers' intent to determine what is the possibility of agro imbalance, and telling the farmers that what corrections they can apply. And we did some Sihor Mandi, we did some experimentation. In Nanded region, we did some experimentation. And this we are also even doing with a couple of agro product companies also. Apart from that, we have developed a product, Quina Limited. Quina means queen. Actually, it's a Swedish word. Quina means when a woman with respect is called as Quina. India reports more than 150 PPR, maternal mortality rate, MMR, which is very high. Even United States reports it's close to 20, which is also very high. There are very few countries where it is below 5. And these countries are New Zealand, Finland, Japan. Right? So this maternal mortality, it's not only issue of India. Even African countries, it is in thousands, this maternal mortality rate. And then maternal mortality risk, people are talking about only just blood pressure, some sugar, sometimes hemoglobin. Even that's a good measure. That's definitely a good measure. And even in our country, we can even improve penetration and get all this testing and done. But what this product is trying to do, this is trying to determine the contextual risk score for every woman, every pregnant woman. And that risk score is used to find out what corrective action to be done. Again, it's challenging. We have been to Melghat area. We even ran the prototype in Amravati district, Melghat, where there are a lot of, there are reports the highest maternal mortality rate. Another product we developed is contextually similar cases about IVF, because IVF, you know, that's very expensive. Sometimes there are 1 cycle, 2 cycle, 3 cycle, 5 cycles. People end up in spending lakhs of rupees. Even one of my PhD students has gone through 3-4 cycles and spent around 8 lakh rupees before he was blessed with I think baby 2 wonderful babies. So what we are trying to do here. And second thing is, doctors also can't tell IVF expenses upfront, because they're not sure whether you will be successful in 1 cycle or 2 cycle or 3 cycle. So they tell you, okay, most probably 2 cycles. Then you keep on spending and there is no results. There's a mental stress, financial expenses, and outcome is not great. So we are trying to find out contextually similar case in the past to find out what are the possible expenses and what are the possible time required. And it is giving very interesting and very successful results. One of the hospitals in New Zealand also showed willingness to accept it. So AI can play a role everywhere. Energy sector, we worked with Sensox. I can't tell you all the projects because there are many projects we worked on, and I was consultant to many companies. I was AI consultant to Tech Mahindra. I am AI consultant to Siemens. I'm even working as AI consultant to Delmon. We work for AI consultant for Envestnet and many other companies, and many companies in Japan too. So our work, Sensoc, where we trained, if someone has question key energy sector, what we can do. So we worked on Sensoc to determine the location. Sensoc receives a few $1 million funding in Bangalore. So I was a consultant to Sensoc, AI consultant, where we help them to identify, use AI to identify the area where they can mount solar panels to generate the energy so that most efficient energy production is possible. So similarly, it's very much possible to do with windmills. It is very much possible to find out the energy distribution, energy management, legal systems. I already talked about projects. We are even working on this context-based system for insurance projects. We are closely associated with National Insurance Academy in Pune. One actually very good question. How can AI use to bring society back to old good habits? Like reading books, doing this thing, that thing. And what I thought that game this guy has actually developed, similar things can be done. But I don't have a clear answer for that question. And definitely I will try to compile my answer and try to answer you. But cleanliness, disease prediction, there is one company which is trying to detect, even if you have a today benign tumor, based on other properties, what is the possibility that you will develop a malignant tumor in future? That probability is developed. It's giving good results, the company claims. And this similar context thing can be applied to other diseases. So basically, there was question that there are data problems. Those are there. Reliable data are very difficult to get. For agriculture, we suffered. For healthcare, we are pleading to hospitals to give us data, and we are finding it very difficult. Someone also said that why the companies like DeepMind are not, or AI labs are not developed in India. I personally think that we believe in results and we don't believe in our own ideas. Indians don't believe in Indians' ideas. That's the problem. Even my students, my friends applied with wonderful ideas for government funding, for this funding, that funding, and unfortunately they could not get any because we don't believe in our own ideas, and probably we have to change for that. So that is more like a cultural issue. We have to believe in ourselves and we have to believe in our idea, and we have to believe in ideas of our colleagues. And definitely data problem, these startups, the companies has to help the startups. We should have some data policies, but maybe hospitals have to come ahead and help. Maybe agricultural companies should come ahead and help these companies. And there should be this collaboration should happen. Many times startups find them very alone and without data in this AI world, and which is very difficult, which is like without water in the desert. So we tried learning based on limited data. What we did for ideas, we are trying for that also. And that also gives success, that as data will come, it will learn. But with limited data, give exceptionally good results. And even one book I read that talks about small data, that you should not go for big data, probably a small data, and that's the solution of future. So there are a lot of other projects I did. There is one company, Capsilon, where I developed a product. We have few patents. Few of my students worked on Grace Notes, finding turning point in the matches, unearthing Bharatanatyam stories. Basically, if you look at that, Harari has written a wonderful book, Homo sapiens. What he said that 6 lakhs years back, there were 2 species like human being, Neanderthal and Homo sapiens. Neanderthals were huge. They were very strong. And on any fine day, if Neanderthals would have confronted Homo sapiens, they would have crushed Homo sapiens. But that did not happen. Homo sapiens survived. We all are Homo sapiens. And Neanderthal became extinct. He had tried to take crack at dates. And he said that Homo sapiens survived because of uncertainty. They have ability to learn from uncertainty. They had intolerance and building non-existing myths. Like we have God like non-existing myth. Money is non-existing myth. Company is a non-existing myth. Even positions are non-existing myth. Prime Minister position is non-existing myth. Maybe. Why I'm talking it? Because they created position. Then there is a person sitting there. So we created these ideas, and that ideas fueled us, and we came to, those ideas came to our rescue, and we survived, and Neanderthal became extinct. Let's go certainty. The opposite is not uncertainty. It is openness, curiosity, and willingness to embrace paradox rather than choose upside down. Uncertainty in relation is romance. Uncertainty in spirituality is mystery. Uncertainty in intellect is revelation. Emotional uncertainty, joy or sorrow. Uncertainty leads to learning. Learning leads to revelation. And revelation leads to survival. And that's why we need uncertainty-based learning. And that's why actually I will go a bit fast. I have tried to write few algorithms. Those can learn from uncertainty. And that's how this book, Reverse Hypothesis Machine Learning, is evolved. We learn in a forward hypothesis, that is assumption. This is a reverse hypothesis machine learning, where we try to combine uncertain pieces. And we don't remove them as an outlier, but we make them as a learning candidate. And we try to gauge uncertain situation, maybe pandemic's uncertain situation, maybe similar uncertainty point might be there in the past. Those points are used to learn so that we can deal with future uncertainty. Those points are rare because those are uncertain. In present scenario, we are removing those because we are thinking that those are outliers. And second problem is systemic. We want to be systemic learner. So it should be whole system learning. Health can't be separate from agriculture. We government always have a separate this in different buckets, but it is a systemic problem because food and health can go together. It's a systemic problem because education, health, and food can go together. Education, health, and wealth can go together. So systemic learning is going to be the key in future, which requires context. So there are many examples. I will just try to conclude it. We can have more case studies, more thoughts on quality food, quality products, quality air, quality health. There can be indirect and direct social contributions. We want to make products intelligent, embed emotional intelligence, building thinking machine, and everything that can contribute to social good as long as it is delivering value to millions, positive value to society. I will just read one of my poems and conclude. Then you can enlighten the world whole. Everyone is running after the goal with all stress and strength. Everyone is forcing the team as a whole in the storm and the rain. Sometimes I wonder and ask myself, do I know the real goal? While running fast all along, have I forgotten my true role? It goes like that. It is the rat race. Body gets tired, so our soul. Success we get without success. Deadlines are made sometimes. Those are missed many times. We try to laugh to show we are happy. We try to balance on the surface sloppy. Today, when I'm looking back, there are just pieces of thoughts. Less success and more loss. No light and everything is dark. Let me tell you the only fact. Light is inside and outside is dark. Look inside for the light and goal. Then you can enlighten the world. So thank you, friends. Thank you for patient listening. So,
thank you, Dr. Parag, for your wonderful presentation on AI for societal good. In fact, you have started with the definition of AI and characterized it for how it can become useful for societal good. In fact, you have brought in the concepts, what makes the applications a societal good. And the use cases, whatever you are given, were excellent. And some of them, though appear to be trivial, but it is not being known to so many people. So it's a wonderful presentation, I could say that. Thanks for your time. And then, of course, you have answered most of the queries which are raised by the registrants during the time they have registered for the program. However, there had been few questions came through the chat box. So maybe we can take a few of them and then let us see how to go about. The first question is about is there a danger of explainable AI confusing the user? Rather than the black box, yeah.
What happens that explainable AI may not confuse, because what happens that again, it won't be everything. It will be combination of some small components. So rather than having a complete elephant picture, you can have 4 or 5 pieces and those can combine to elephant. So that way it generally develops. So I don't see it will confuse.
Okay, there is a question with regard to AI. It appears that one definition says that AI is non-algorithmic. Sort of the applications of AI, as per one of the definitions, I don't know where the definition has appeared. It is non-algorithmic approach of problem solving AI. Whereas the current day AI use extensively ML and deep learning, which are algorithmic based. Why there is a contradiction in definition?
I don't think
so basically the common sense approach. AI appears to be a common sense approach, because the very first example what you gave for the grass cutting and then as well as the rickshaw pulling and things like that. Now there are commonsensical approach. Okay, so now we have been heavily dependent on machine learning and deep learning, which are quite algorithmic in nature. So why this changes occur?
Maybe it may be very beginning people have given that, because initially what intelligent definition was, anything that human can do is intelligent. Even rote learning was assumed to be learning because you're just reproducing. So in the beginning, all AI systems were rule-based. So there was hardly any algorithm. But as we realize the quantum of data, we need algorithm to deal with it. And that's probably the need you made it more algorithm.
Okay. And see, conventionally, Lisp and Prolog, they have been used for AI applications.
Right.
Okay. Of late, we don't seem to be hearing these two languages are in use. What has happened to those languages? And
Actually, what happened that even the AI, which actually was not successful till 92, the reason being there was no necessary infrastructure, and the society or the market was not ready for AI. If you look at now, today, you actually need everything to code. And those languages, even Python came in picture, and probably very few people are using C now. That doesn't mean that C is obsolete, because C is used many other places, even compilers and a couple of other places. The thing is that the evolution happened, and these languages, if you look at Prolog and other languages, those are not just not building blocks like C. Those were actually developed for the need of that time. But right now the need is changed, and that can be made with Python, that can be made with R. And basically C is already there, which is and C++ and these versions are there. So it became not relevant to use those languages. The context is changed completely.
Okay. See, there are some perceived issues associated with AI, like unemployment and security. Can you highlight on this?
Actually, what I think, there are always questions that a singularity, that AI will overtake humans, first thing. So what I always thought that first important thing is, as long as we are sapiens, no one can replace us, because we have ability to learn from uncertainty. Imagine COVID-like situation, only human can deal with it, not AI. So we always have this adaptability. So survival is not an issue. The question remains unemployment. What happens that AI generally creates a new avenues for employment. Now we have to seriously look into it, and we have to create new avenues for employment. I was in discussion with one of the, I had been to this one Switzerland, some social worker. So what he said that Switzerland earns so much money on just tourism and few industries they have, that they are ready to give pension to everyone, and there is no need for people to work. So only people who are, and all those who are citizens and not working, they receive handsome money. So only people who are interested in working work. People don't work for money. So I'm just thinking that maybe tomorrow, if we can have that much of prosperity, unemployment won't be there, because people will work for their interest. So I think prosperity is always solution. If AI can bring that prosperity, then unemployment is irrelevant, because then if you have interest, you work, and you're not working for money, because that much money is earned, that prosperity is there. For example, if we have a mechanism to produce the food for all our people, we have mechanism to produce the clothes for all our people, then probably we will have a similar Switzerland type scenario. And I don't know whether that is actually a social worker in Switzerland who told me that. So when I was at Zug and Zurich. So probably AI should lead to prosperity. Then unemployment is not a question.
Okay, right now AI seems to be creating inequality because of automation. So okay, so there is some sort of, I don't know whether how long will it take for India to reach that stage. Okay, there is a question regarding little sort of predictive, basically, where do you see India in the field of AI in the next 5 to 10 years when compared to China, which already seems to have deployed AI solutions in day-to-day life?
So what I think we are doing very good. There are many startups that are coming up. Even one of my friend Abhijit Gupta, his company was sold for 65 million just 6 months back. So a lot of startups are coming. What is happening that we have to actually use whatever we are doing for our own, because selling product in India is always challenging. For example, I made a healthcare product. My company can't become self-sufficient by selling in India. Then we go outside and sell it. So we have to come up with some way so that consuming our own technology ourselves. Right now, we are only looking at producing technology. Okay. I am also looking at consuming technology. Our own people have developed, but are we ready to consume it? And are we ready to pay to consume it? Mm. If we are not ready to pay to consume it, this technology will go outside. There will be many people, there may be many scientists. They may go outside and try to sell it. Because suppose no hospital is buying here and hospitals are not paying me money, I will search for a customer in New Zealand, I will search for a customer somewhere else, or I will search for a customer in Africa. So we have to actually, what I'm saying, made in India, make in India and consume in India. So there's two combinations, not just make, but consume, and consume strategically, not for free. Pay and consume. And then probably then sky's the limit. We have great people, we have great researchers.
Okay. And see, now the government of India has come out with the project RAISE, no? That is responsible AI for social empowerment. So can you highlight some features of that?
Actually, what happened that I somehow not know much about it. Basically, I found that we have to actually, someone who is really an AI expert has to step into it to make this very few startups initiative, because government always takes wonderful initiatives. I don't have a doubt about it. But what happens that the people who are trying to execute those initiatives, it's like you say Smart India Hackathon. It's a very good initiative, but it is not consumed. The people who are not successful don't get feedback. So if thousands of people taken part and got certificates, what's the result? I want they should receive some direction and they should grow. So what happens that loop is not complete. So initiatives are wonderful, but the implementation, the people implementing it, there is some issues. Probably those will get resolved with the time. Even startup, there are a lot of good initiatives for startups. But for example, there is an initiative that make AI BTech start everywhere AI BTech. And I think that it doesn't make sense. Let people master the fundamental things. Don't consume. Then every small college here and there is starting BTech AI. Correct? So I'm just wondering why BTech AI? Let them do BTech computer, no issues. Correct? They can learn the artificial intelligence and then they develop a product. At the age of 17, sometimes what happens that there's too much hype. That 13-year kid developed something and got award. 14-year kid that day. I'm just really
maybe they are stray cases. What are being highlighted? Maybe stray cases.
So maybe it's my personal opinion.
No. What you say is perfectly, I understand. That is really true. Some sort of hype is already there around AI. So that is true.
So
And
the government has wonderful initiatives. Means I think that someone visionary is starting the initiative, but those die down in between and are implemented in improper way somewhere.
see, you are talking about consuming AI applications. Basically, you know, when you said that, you know, we are developing AI application, but we are not consuming it. Okay.
And sometimes consuming immature AI applications.
Okay. So,
Because what happens that mature AI applications anyone will consume, but then outside companies will consume. You can promote our own development by consuming half-cooked food. Those are not matured 100%. And if you're ready to consume that, or maybe better that. So for example, so then probably it will.
Yeah, particularly for a country like India where we have so much of population, and if we start consuming the solution, definitely you know, we will prosper, as you say that.
Correct.
I mean, what you said is really true. And one last question, in terms of course, we are talking about the skill development for AI. Are we in the right path? Are we creating enough skill in the AI sector? Or what is the system? You know, how can it sort of bridge the gap in terms of skill shortages and things like that?
I think skills are generally developed on the job. We develop a background. In the institutes, in the labs, we develop a background. But skills are developed actually on the job, while doing the projects, or while doing research with industry or research organization, or if you are so colleges should have some startups. First thing, all colleges should have some startups, and then that skill building will take place. Otherwise, what happens that you learn how much you remember. Suppose someone will tell me whether you read your PhD thesis. I haven't read it. I have published it 25 years back and I haven't read it after that. Correct? How many people read their own PhD thesis? Very few. So it's really fact. Unfortunately, that's true. So skill development happens on job only.
So basically, it has to be a hands-on thing.
Correct.
So, okay. I think that in this case, you know, still we are not geared up in terms of providing hands-on exercise at the college level. Still, you know, we are lacking that type of. Even the faculty members are not fully geared up in terms of defining solutions, which requires, you know, some sort of approach. So there is a gap is there, and I think over a period of time we will be able to bridge that gap. So
that's true.
Thank you.
Many schools are doing wonderfully. Means I've visited. I generally visit many schools here also. Pune, around many directors, principals are doing wonderful job. They're trying definitely, and I'm very hopeful. Probably the scenario will be different. There will be startup in every college. There will be a lot of people doing on-job thing, learning thing. They are making and breaking things. Correct. Unsuccessful projects will be rewarded. Why give the best paper award to the best paper? Sometimes I think that it's someone who has the best attempt award we want.
Even failures to be recognized.
Correct. So serious attempts should be recognized. So serious attempt awards should be there.
Correct. So, thank you, Dr. Parag, and I request Dr. Saktivel, our chairman, IEEE Computer Society, to formally propose the vote of thanks.
Yes, sir. Good evening to all of you. On behalf of the ACM Chennai Professional Chapter, Computer Society of India Chennai Chapter, and IEEE Computer Society Chennai Chapter, we would like to thank Dr. Parag Kulkarni, Professor AI and ML, Tokyo International University, Japan, for this informative and excellent lecture on experimental AI for social good. Thank you very much, sir. I would like to thank Mr. H.R. Mohan, Chairman, ACM Chennai Professional Chapter, Mr. P.V. Subramaniam, Chairman, Computer Society of India Chennai Chapter, and Dr. Akhila, Managing Committee Member, CSI Chennai Chapter, for their dedicated support in arranging this webinar successfully. Thank you, H.R. Mohan sir, P.V. Subramaniam sir, and Akhila madam. I would like to thank all the participants who have participated through the virtual platforms like Google Meet and YouTube. So without their participation, this webinar will not be a successful one. So we thank all the participants who have actively participated and asked many questions during the webinar. Thank you, Ananda. So thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you, Dr. Shaktivel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kulkarni, for such an interesting session. And on the behalf of PHI Learning, I would like to thank you for giving us your valuable time for this webinar and enlighten us on such a good topic of artificial intelligence. Thank you so much, Dr. Kulkarni.
Thank
Sir,
you.
I also thank you very much. I myself can say that I have learned a lot. The terms that you used, I think I will be, even though I don't know much about them, but I think I will be just, trying to get to know what they exactly mean. And something like, you said something like this cultural barrier that we have in, accepting our own ideas. That I liked very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mohan sir,
Yeah.
also.
Okay, I will be failing my duty if I don't thank Ms. Shivani, Senior Editor of PhD Learning.
Thank you so much.
For facilitating this lecture. Basically, she was the one who introduced Dr. Parag, even though I knew Dr. Parag earlier. See, the concept of having him for our today's lecture was initiated by Ms. Shivani. Thank you, Shivani and Lalita, for your support in organizing this lecture.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohan.
Yeah. And before we formally wind up our today's session, I have a few announcements regarding our forthcoming programs. On 6th February, we have a program on educational reforms, education on demand, and National Education Policy 2020 and beyond. On 13th, we have a program on stitching experience design into agile methodology. On 20th of this February, we have a program on value-based IT solutions delivery through discipline agile. And the last program of February will be on mobile forensics and cyber crime investigations. So the invitation for all these programs have been mailed to our members and other groups. Please do register and participate and get benefited. Thank you. Thank you once again for all your contribution, joining. And so with this, we will wind up this program today. And good night to everyone.
Good night, Mr. Mohan.
Good
Thank
night,
you so
sir.
much
Good night.
once again.
Good night, doctor.
Good night.
Good night.